Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another edition of A Dacetacular Mind. Now, it's been a while since we've had our one-on-one chats, and since I've produced a new episode. Pardon my tongue-tying abilities there. But part of the reason a new episode hasn't been produced is because I've really been in a good headspace lately. And the point of this podcast, or this discussion on a weekly basis, was to get things out in the open and be able to express myself, because talking to humans is just something I can't do. So talking into a microphone in front of a computer screen that just says new untitled project is a lot easier for me than having a one-on-one conversation with a human being about issues and topics that just, sometimes make me personally feel awkward to have. The episode we're going to do today, well, another part of the reason why we haven't had Dacetacular Mind is I was hyping up a episode called I Hate My Job. I'm not going to do that episode. Because let's face it, there are very few people who enjoy their job. Truly. It's probably a small percentage, because there's a lot of jobs out there that are just that, a job. It's a paycheck, and sometimes things that you're really good at are not necessarily the things you're very passionate about. In my instance, that's the case. I have had the fortune to learn a system and become pretty good at it without college, without formal training. I have put my knowledge together through bits and pieces of just experience and learning from those that work around me. So to do an episode called I Hate My Job is a little harsh, because there are aspects of my job I don't care for, as does everybody. But there are aspects from the job that have shaped me into who I am today. So the ability to sit here and have this conversation on a podcast with the equipment that I need is because of that job. The knowledge I have today about certain topics, about how things work, are from that job. Good experiences, bad experiences. And to be honest, I'm currently going through a rough experience, but I'm learning from that as well. I'm learning that, not always are you backed into a corner and you have to do what you have to do, because there's no other choice. There's always opportunity. Change is frightening. And at that point as well, you think I'd have learned that, considering I was part of a change management team for a good 6 years. Taking a system, putting it into operations that were primarily on paper, and primarily of a generation who didn't grow up with computers like I did. So there was an unfair advantage on my part for growing up with computers, whereas most of them have grown up with automotive and can make me look like an idiot when it comes to how a car actually works. So I thought it was unfair. I thought it was unjust to just be like, I hate my job, because I as unhappy as I currently am, I don't hate it. I've met a lot of good people. I've met a lot of bad people. But also, bit my tongue, through all of this, I had earned experience. I've been in the workforce for 18 years, and that is more than half my life. Let that sink in. I started at one of the lowest positions within the company at the age 14 because it was a part-time job. It was summer work. It was something I was doing when I wasn't at school. And somehow I was able to pull myself up into the position I am now through a lot of hard work, and still hard work that I'm trying to do. Because honestly, I don't feel that I am where I could be based on what I know, how long I've been around, and what I can do. So I'm not going to do an episode just bashing the hell out of where I work. They deserve it, don't get me wrong, because there are a lot of pitfalls with the current company and current mindset that's there. But that mindset and structure wasn't always there. I have learned a lot over those 18 years and the various incarnations. So I thought it would be a good topic of conversation today to talk about leadership. Because you don't get where you are with anything without a leader. So there are leaders of certain projects, countries, stuff like that, but they haven't always been leaders. And to become a good leader, you usually have to learn from a good leader and learn from some bad leaders. And I have had a handful of both. There are a lot of gentlemen out there and a lot of women out there who have, I want to say, had the opportunity, but probably had the unfortunate opportunity. It was an opportunity, but it wasn't like a pleasure, because I know I'm difficult. I'm very headstrong. I will speak up when I know what I'm talking about, and I will remain quiet when I feel in group settings. So for a lot of those leaders, if they had dealt with me in a group setting, we'll say 90% of the time, the 10% of the time could be rough, because I don't like to air grievances within a group. It's just, A, it's unprofessional, and B, then you're in a pissing match in front of people, and other people can become involved from that. So the one-on-ones to me are more valuable, because you know who your leader is, and the leader knows who you are as an employee, and you can kind of sculpt the conversation based on those personalities. Now, to me, and I'm just going to start this off with the conversation right now, a good leader is a leader who jumps in the trenches with somebody. A leader, in my opinion, and there are several people out there who will have different opinions, usually sculpted by the generations or upbringings or how they got to where they are. But to me, a leader is someone who inspires, and I think everybody can agree on that. The point of inspiration is different. There are those that will yell, push through fear, and motivate through a sense of urgency that way. And then there are those who nurture, who will help grow and have conversations with you. Both have their benefits, but both also have their downfalls. Granted, I believe the latter that I spoke of do what I say as I say it, has its downsides, especially if the person who is issuing those commands at that point is not well versed in what they actually do. And that goes back to me saying a good leader is one who can get in the trenches. I have had, and not many opportunities, but on occasion I have had a chance to lead projects, lead individuals into, again, projects. I don't like using the same word twice, but things had to get done, and just by chance or just by knowledge base or for whatever the reason was, a lot of the leadership roles would fall on me. And I personally, and I feel a good leader, would never ask someone to do something that they can't do. I'm going to use an example from WWE, where Vince McMahon, for the longest time, and just recently with WrestleMania 36, I think it was, the second one at the Performance Center, he often said he wouldn't force a talent to do what he wouldn't be willing to do himself. So there was an incident, not an incident, but a situation where Gronkowski was the host of WrestleMania, and Vince wanted him to jump off a platform onto a group of wrestlers, like kind of like a splash. Gronk was very hesitant, and that's fair. Gronk is a big guy, and you're jumping from the heights. You put a lot of faith in the people who are going to catch you, but Vince, in his late 70s, jumps off the platform onto a crash pad mat to show him that, hey, it's not that bad. So, in his 70s, he's still leading by example, and to me, that goes a long way. If you are working for someone or working with someone or on a project, your general job, and you see that when the shit hits the fan, they're next to you doing what you do, or have come up through a history of doing what you do, it's easier to take direction from said person. It just, to me, it always was. There was a couple times where I have moved into a more corporate role and more heavily on the IT. So a lot of my work is done from a computer chair, whereas back in 2007 to 2009, so in 2009 as a supervisor, the organization I was with underwent a lot of transition, eating a lot of inventory from different buildings. So a lot of things just kind of fell because of just the rush of having to get it in, that you had to go back and move lines and reorganize them, put them in a neat OCD type style order, so it was easier to pick. Now, I never once expected people to do what I couldn't do. And if the project was urgent enough, I would stand there and do it with them. That has always been a philosophy of me. Granted, that was seven. Whew, that was 13 years ago, and I might not be doing the physical work as I used to, and with the ability that I could. But if push came to shove, I was there beside them. I wouldn't hold people to standards that I personally couldn't do myself. And even so, if I had back then, 13 years ago, being 13 years younger, you can move a little bit quicker. I know I got all kinds of back problems, knee problems, hip problems, and everything on my body doesn't work because of the whole wrestling thing. I still put it within reason. So if I could do X, I'm asking you to do X minus Y. Because I feel the minus Y is fair because you do it 7 days a week or 5 days a week and 8 hours nonstop, and I just came in and did it for 1 day for 8 hours. People are people. Like, that's what I think the common thing is forgotten in a lot of leadership of a certain generational mindset. Now, because of that, and because of that leadership style that neglects humans are humans, and that they're the most valuable asset to any company, you get a lot of disgruntled employees. I mean, you see it all the time. You see people, like, basically everybody fighting for a minimum wage increase or a cost of living increase has a fair gripe, especially on the opposite end where a company will tout record profits. I'll use WWE as an example again, where they're touting billion-dollar years in revenue, and you went and released 135 employees during a pandemic. Granted, the business model may have made sense because you had so many employees, but you did it during a pandemic, so optics are everything, right? And it's hard to not be disgruntled at that point, because if you're the employee that stayed, and you're still making bare bones minimum, and your employer is posting on Wall Street Journal and doing interviews and for the quarterly financials and yearly financials telling you that we're up in profits, meanwhile you're barely making enough to get gas to get to your job, that's a problem. And that's where I think the leadership fails, and leadership is failing hard. And the other source of that issue is that generational gap. Everyone at that top tier that will tell you we had record profits pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. You'll hear it a lot. I worked from the ground up to get to where I am. Now, I personally have the benefit to be in the middle, because I've worked to get myself to where I am today. I don't think I'm where I should be capped. Like, I'm hitting a glass ceiling right now. I'm trying to break through the damn thing. But I don't forget, as that intermediate, as a person who was stocking and then ended up being a forklift driver and then got to be a supervisor and then got the opportunities from like 70-hour work weeks working for like $7 an hour, I know what it took to get to where I am. And I would hope no one would ever discredit the hard work I put in to be where I'm at. But on the flip side, I also understand within that 18-year gap, things cost more. Gas rarely goes down below $3. The housing market is fucking stupid right now. And to just live, you're killing yourself at a job that doesn't give you the bare minimum to live. And that's a whole nother conversation to have, considering I don't think raising minimum wage helps, because everybody else would then get incrementally raised to reflect the lowest salary raise. Because how are you going to keep skilled workers or people who went to college or people who have a trade? How do you elevate them when the salary is $15 an hour minimum wage for non-skilled jobs? And that's not a slight to those who have that job. I never would want to deal with a fucking customer. I've seen them. I have dealt with them. It's a hard job to sit there and have someone who thinks they're entitled to yell at you. I don't envy that, and I do think you deserve $15 an hour. I think the key problem with that is, why do things cost so much when they're so cheap to make? And it all comes back to the leadership of that bonus check that the higher-ups need to get in order to make themselves widen the gap between you and I. And I do lump ourselves into you and I, because I'm not poor. I know there's a lot of poor out there, but I have enough wealth to just... I'm still miserable. I have enough wealth not to be considered poor, but not get help. So by the time the taxes and all that come out, we're on the same playing field for the most part. But a leader shouldn't sit on top and tout those successes. How are you ever going to motivate people to work for your company when you tout $1 billion in revenue and then do nothing to help the people who got you there? And that is a sticking point for me in leadership. So both from a corporate structure and also from like your department and dealing with the leader you currently report to. And this is getting more narrowed and more specific. So going from floor worker to CEO combat to, I work in this department and this is my department lead. We all know we're all not getting paid enough. That is the number one stickler. There is no one on this planet who will ever say I am justified in my pay. Everybody always wants more. It's the nature of capitalism. If you don't want more, chances are you've never actually worked. If that makes sense. Like you've never had to need something. So to remove money from the equation, because that will always be a consistent problem. There will always be a consistent play. Even if you are justifiably making what you should make, if somebody asked you, hey, do you think you deserve a raise? Absolutely. No one should ever say no to that question, is the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, you work in a job. You don't care for your job. Your boss probably doesn't really care for the job because it's driving them nuts too. Because it's a lot of fast-paced go. The American... I have the fortune to have experienced the American business model and the Canadian business model, where I firmly believe the Canadian business model cares much more deeply for their populace and their employee base. Even though if you were to ask someone who works in the Canadian structure day in and day out, if they feel they deserve better kind of conditions, they might. They may have their legitimate qualms with where they work. But having worked for the American side and the Canadian side, I can tell you hands down, the Canadian side takes care of their employees way better than the American side. For starters, there's a holiday almost every damn month. And if they didn't have a national holiday, they called it Family Day. And they gave you a day off because you need to be with your family. So their work-life balance in Canada is much more understood than it is in America. In America, when you take a 40-hour-a-week job salary, there is this unspoken rule that you work 50 to 60 hours. That's bullshit. And here's why that's absolute bullshit. You're not paid for 50 to 60 hours. Your paycheck says you work a 40-hour week. It is divided hourly by 40 hours. You are not paid for 40 hours in 1 minute. So for someone to sit there that the unspoken rule is you're to work 50 to 60 hours is bullshit. And other countries acknowledge that that was bullshit. America has not, because the culture is so ingrained that the moment you call bullshit on that, they will find someone who doesn't call bullshit on that. So I can sit here and openly call bullshit on it and say, yep, 40 hours is 40 hours. You pay me for 40. I'm doing 40. That's it. And truthfully, I still work 50 to 60. I get that it's bullshit. I understand that it's bullshit. And yet, I still do it. And that's a problem to me. And that's a problem through leadership, because leadership doesn't understand that work-life balance. And most times they don't understand it because they themselves are doing the same exact thing. They took a job, got a bump in salary, your paycheck says 40 hours, they're still working 50 to 60. And usually the further up you go on that ladder, the more hours you put in. Usually. If you're a snake, you move up there, but somehow manage to make it look like you work 50 to 60, but probably do 20 to 30. It's a tough machine, and I've seen both sides of it. I have seen that leader, and I have seen that employee who will work the 50, 60 hours for only 40-hour pay, which then incrementally you're making as much as somebody on the floor because you don't get overtime. But I also have seen the flip side where a bad leader, yeah, he may physically be there for 50 to 60 hours, but when you spend 20 hours just talking bullshit, and I've used bullshit a lot in this episode, so if I offend you, I apologize, but if you're spending 20 hours just shooting the breeze with somebody on a call, or consistently scheduling calls and never actually doing something, you're not really working 60 hours. You're giving You're putting in 60 hours, but you're really only doing 20 hours worth of work, if that. And that's stuff that employees pick up on from leaders, and that's a bad leadership quality. I have dealt with many leaders over my career, and I understand days can be nuts. You can get 150 emails, or you're on calls from 8 to 5. I have seen those days. I have done those days. Admittedly, those days do not occur 5 days a week. Point blank. So yeah, you may have a Monday or Tuesday where we're working 10 to 12 hours, but by Thursday and Friday, it starts to taper off. So to sit there and tout that you do that 5 days a week, and sometimes on weekends, is bullshit. I don't want to hear it. Your employee doesn't want to hear it, because your employee is doing the same thing. And chances are your employee is getting work from what you sat on and just had to listen. You're not actually doing the work as a leader. You're receiving the information, you're regurgitating it secondhand to someone else. So if you don't know what you're talking about, it's a rough fucking discussion to have with the person who has to figure out what you're talking about, which then increases the time that they have to take on the task, which all could have been avoided if they had just listened to the task from the get-go. Now, I get it. There are chains and orders and organizations to follow, so multiple projects and multiple tasks can be done throughout the week, because a boss may have 4 employees, but the boss doesn't necessarily want those 4 employees working on the same thing. They want those 4 employees working on 4 different tasks, so this way we get 4 things done, not just one thing done with 4 people. I get it. I'm not dumb. Everybody gets that. But as a leader, you have to have faith in the person below you to be able to do that task. You have to inspire them. You have to listen. You have to, for fucking starters, know what they know. Because then how can you ever fairly assess the person below you? How can you fairly review or dictate the future of a person below you, and you have started the conversation with, I don't know what you do. I know what you do is important. I know that a lot of things around here wouldn't run if you weren't involved, but I don't know what you do. That is a very disheartening sentence to hear, because that means everything you do for the company is not recognized by your boss. Your boss essentially takes it for granted. That leader knows that things gets done, but he doesn't know who does it. And that is so epically disheartening. To why would that employee want to continue to do what they're doing? Several times I've heard the phrase that, hey, I'm just a cog in the wheel, and if the cog pops off, they put a new one in, and it just keeps, the machine keeps on moving. And that's very true. But the machine will never run as good as it did with the original cog, because everything is aftermarket these days. The new cog maybe doesn't have the same grooves that help the machine run smoother. Yeah, the machine's running, but is it really running at 100% capacity? Did you get the right amount of grease or the right amount of motivation, we'll say in this situation, being the grease, to make it run smoothly? Or did you over-grease it? And realistically, it's still running half efficiency because you didn't get them in the groove right. There's not the right grooves. They don't understand it. There's not that initial knowledge or initial imprint on the cog that made the machine run right the first time. Leaders should do everything in their power to keep their employees and keep the people who follow them inspired. Movements die in life because all of a sudden a leader falls. The person we thought was the most inspirational, was making strides for what we were believing in, all of a sudden has faults or flaws, and then all of a sudden that movement starts losing steam, and we're back to the analogy that the machine is never running as good as it used to. How, as a leader, do you inspire? And my original point to begin this entire conversation is a good leader is in the trenches with their employees. They know the fight. They fight the fight. They don't go, hey, run into that fight, maybe I'll catch up later. No, they're charging in on their own. And and people follow that. I've been through countless leaders, both in my professional life, when we talk about careers, and outside of that career. I have tried to be a leader. I have always tried to show that I am willing to do the work to get to where we need to go. Please come with me. And the leaders I have always responded to best are the same way. Yeah, it's a shit situation, but we can get through it. And there may be light on the other side. And often than not, there isn't light on the other side. It's just more shit. But the fact that I saw my leader go through it first, side by side with me, understood the situation, talked to me like a human being, yeah, I would do what it takes to go through that next pile of shit. And so on and so forth. And that's probably why I'm still where I am today, because for every bad leader I had, they don't last. They don't. It's a rough time frame when they're there. It's a rough experience because you feel like you're proving yourself over again, and the guy that you're supposed to put your faith in, the guy that you're or the girl that you're supposed to work for, because at that point, if they're a bad leader you're working for, not working with, it's tough. It's exhausting. It's tough to wake up every day. It's tough not to just call out, because it's just tough to keep going. But I assure you, for every one shit leader, there is a good leader on the horizon, at least in my experience. Because every time I had a bad leader, the next leader instilled wisdom, new ideas, new motivation in me to not leave. And honestly, I'm at a point where I'm ready to pull the parachute. But luckily, the hard work and effort that I have put in over my time frame where I'm at hasn't gone unnoticed by other leaders. And those other leaders, I feel, can guide me and could empower me to the next level, whereas in several instances in the past, others have failed. The one thing I have thoroughly enjoyed with this, my time where I'm at, and which kind of speaks to the frustrations I've had in recent years, there was always another challenge. And each challenge was met with reward. And each reward was guided by a leader who understood how to motivate me personally, as well as others who are not like me on the same team. And they would help inspire and help keep pushing forward. And as we're doing that, they were there. They weren't on the other end of a phone call. They weren't on the other end of an email. They were next to me, dealing with it. Going through those long, exhaustive days where nothing seemed to work. And waking up the next morning to try to figure it out after those days. And doing it yet again. I respect all them. I have told them I respect them. I have thanked them for helping me be who I am. And yes, Chris Dace in the workforce in 2022 isn't Chris Dace in the workforce in 2012. Or 2012. That was way too many 20s. But you have to understand, in that 10 years, I've gone through several leaders. And I said, for every good leader you get, there's a bad leader. And those bad leaders leave a bad taste in your mouth, and they beat a little out of you each time. And I think within those 10 years, I've done my damnedest not to lose a lot of that. And there are days where absolutely I wake up and I go, you know what, this isn't worth it. And then there's days when I power through. And there's days I wake up inspired. I don't know why. I think I'm just bipolar or crazy. But I'll wake up like, I'm going to get this shit done. We're going to move this needle. We're going to keep going forward. We're going to make it better for the floor employee. Because I actually care about how their day-to-day works. Because I used to do their day-to-day. It's not the same. But at the same time, I did it. I get it. And I don't want, and this will probably be another episode down the road, where I get into the debate between college and experience. If you go from schooling, high school, grade school, all that, right into college, and you never work a damn day in your life into an organization you're going into, and then start rolling out what you think needs to be done, you suck. You don't know what it's like to be that floor employee. You don't know what it's like to be backed into a corner. You don't know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. And then you roll out something that makes it harder for them to earn that paycheck. The stresses are unbelievable. And as a leader, you need to know that. So go back and listen to my empathy episode, because as a leader, empathy is the number one trait I look for. The number one trait every leader should have. Yeah, you got to be firm. Yeah, sometimes no is no. But it's not always no. It's not always a command. You got to know your department in and out. Whether you're a floor supervisor, a call center supervisor, a supervisor of a fast food restaurant, a director of a company, a regional director of a company, a general manager of a large facility, you should know that box or that area you are in inside and out. Because if you can't do it, how could you ever expect somebody else to do it? How? Just think of that. I want you to move that mountain with just your hands. What kind of ask are you doing there? And that's kind of where I want to end the conversation on leadership. And I know a lot of it probably felt like me just airing out my own personal issues, but I think it speaks volumes to anyone in a current situation. I see it with my fiance. I see it with my friends. I see it with the leaders that I have to work with and the leaders I have had to work with. Because as I sit here preaching from my pedestal on how you should be a good leader, I know being a leader is not always easy because you report to someone. The only time you have an easy job is when you're the top dog because you set the guidelines. And if you become out, and I'll say this as well, some of the best leaders I have, they don't last long because they're really good leaders and they practiced empathy. And the people above them were a shit leader who didn't practice empathy and only looked at the books. So it's a vicious circle. I mean, if you start your own company and you're a leader with empathy and you understand, realize that people are people, and you hire a leader below you to do with the same philosophy and the same empathy and the same style, eventually you'll get down to an organization that works very well. And yeah, you're not making billion-dollar profits, but you're probably making million-dollar profits, and everybody in the organization's happy. And I guess that's kind of like a pipe dream, at least in America, and I'm sure around the world. But the American capitalism business, or capitalistic structure, is that way. And the political structure, everything is based on bottom line profit. And it's sad. That's why I'm slowing down in conversation, because the more you think about it, it's rough. If only that greed didn't drive anything. I can't sit here and say I'm not greedy. I want more money. I always want more money. We all want more money. We want to be able to wake up and not feel stress that, hey, I don't have money for food this week. You know what? I really want this PlayStation 5, but I'll never be able to get it because I can't afford it. You want to live a life where that type of stuff comes easy, and that your primary focus should be on people's and experiences and living life because it's so short. I get that. And that's not the conversation we're having now. The conversation is, if you are a position of leadership, inspire those below you. Inspire those who have opted into your journey, whether through voluntary means, as they go, hey, I see you're working on something, I want to help you out. Or, I want this job, can I work with you? Or through involuntary means, where all of a sudden some D-bag gets a promotion and then you're stuck working for them. Don't be a D-bag. Because it doesn't help. It doesn't help anyone. Yeah, again, we'll go back to the cog in the machine. You pull this cog out, put a new cog in. Hopefully it gives at least 75% of the result that the other one did. Yeah, if you want to work on that's a dangerous path, because I have watched departments, companies, and other things fail because you replaced a cog thinking that first cog wasn't valuable, and that other cog goes off and fucking makes bank or crushes it elsewhere. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm the best leader. I know I have failed people. I know I have let the empathetic and passiveness of outside work projects, so this is not even work related, impact those that were trying really hard to succeed at something, and then they didn't, because as they were working hard, 4 other people weren't working hard, and they got frustrated, they left, they did their own thing, and now they're happier, one would assume. And that's fine. And I'm telling you, if you were that person, because I'm that person right now, do it. Get out. That's a bad leader. Do not work for a bad leader. I was a bad leader. Do not work. Don't work with me. you just have to be empathetic of the situation. You want to move the needle, but you also have to find a way to inspire people. And it's not easy. It's not an easy task. But when a person comes to you and says, hey, this is how you can help me be more motivated to move a needle, maybe you should fucking listen. Just saying. Well, that's going to do it for my leadership talk, which, again, it probably felt like me airing out aggravations from 18 years of various leadership styles that I've had to deal with, and it partly was, but at the same time, it's really just advice for anyone out there who's trying to be a leader. Again, I know my shortcomings. I think I lean more into the if you don't want to do it, then don't do it, get away from me type mentality. But I could see where if you're working a team, it doesn't help for the ones that do want to do it and do want to succeed. And then, 2 people want to and 3 people don't, and the 3 people drag down the other 2 people. It's not a good strategy. And I have learned from that. I have built from that. And I try to help empower those that do want to move forward while letting those that don't want to move forward kind of fall off on their own. Still not the perfect style, but at least the people who are trying, I try to keep motivated. Because as being a leader, you learn as well. But if somebody comes up and openly asks you, how can I do better? Fucking listen, okay? Now, that one is personal, and that one is aggressive. But it's really annoying. Because some people take leadership roles and then choose not to lead. And that never works. So, that's going to do it for this episode of Dacetacular Mind. It was a long one. It was a doozy. If it falls down to the ears of people who have led me, I'll let you guess whether I considered you a good leader or a bad leader. I think you'll be able to tell by my demeanor and my work output. And the fact that I haven't been confrontational. I think you need that sometimes from employees, but there's 2 levels of confrontational. There's constructive, and then there's just name-calling. So, yeah. Awkward. Leadership. Fucking sucks. But if you do it right, magic can happen. Put that on a t-shirt. Dacetacular Gaming for a Cause is coming up March 25th to the 27th, kicking off at noon. We're going to have 2 stages this year. The schedule's posted on the website. Gifts or the raffles are posted on the website. And our guest streamer event kicks off on March 6th with Mr. Travis Goss. So those are also posted on the website. Make sure you donate. Facebook.com/Basement Protocol Productions. Everything we do is posted through there. So that is definitely something you want to check out. I'm going to try to do more of these because, like I said, it's tough to do these on a regular basis if I'm in a good headset, because if my mindset's good, there's really no need to talk to a computer on a microphone. But if my mindset's bad, which, I had a rough week last week with dealing with changes and just the future based on things out of my control, I think it'd be a good time to come in here and talk about leadership, because that's really what I'm dealing with right now. I want to be a leader. I have a bad leader. How do I get to be my own leader while not repeating the mistakes of the bad leader I'm currently dealing with? That's really the reason I talked out this episode. If you made it this far, that little lesson was in the plugs. There you go. So, thank you guys for taking this trip into this weird, crazy Dacetacular Mind, and I'll see you down the road. For the few, for the proud, for the Dacetacular. God, I can't believe you keep listening to my shit. Deuces.